Hello and welcome to the Stacking Dingers show. I'm your host, Matthew, aka Sheep, aka Dark Sheep. Find me online at D4RKSH33P underscore. This, of course, is your home for all things Underdog and MLB Best Ball. Tonight, we are on the verge of filling the bullpen and hitting into Dinger season, and we have a gigantic show, literally gigantic, probably the most guests we've had on one episode of Stacking Dingers. We have assembled a cast of characters, a bunch of people who do a lot of volume in MLB Best Ball and dailies and all that kind of good stuff. So we're going to be picking their brain and trying to see exactly, how they manage their exposures, how they time their drafts throughout the season, and any other kind of tips and tricks they've picked up from drafting so many teams. So, since I am on the tail end of a cold, I am going to throw it to Billy Jones here to take it away and drive the ship tonight. Billy, do you want to go around the horn and introduce our guests?
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate you trusting me with this. Last time I hosted, I think there were multiple technical difficulties. So the hosting tonight is exclusively talking only.
Yeah,
You're not
I'll
letting me
handle
click
the
any
technical
buttons.
difficulties. I'll make those.
Yeah, no button clicking for me. But yeah, I'm excited to bring everyone in. How do you want to do this? Like, just you
Well,
just
I will
surprise
pick
me.
one. Yeah, we'll surprise you. First of all, we have Jason, aka woowooJtrain, sometime streamer on his own channel, multi-time guest on Stacking Dingers, or maybe one-time guest. I'm not sure, but Jason is here, and I said you were going to introduce him, and then I introduced him. So I'm just
I
going to
was like,
continue.
also your voice sounds great. So like, I don't want to hear it with this whole like I can't host tonight.
All right. Well, let's
What's up,
just keep going
Jason?
around. I'll keep going on the intros. We also have Spencer Thurmond, sthurmond on the site. Not too available on the internet elsewhere. Does some other content around over at Bubba and the Bloom. He helps them out with some stuff occasionally too. Spencer is here. And we have first time Stacking Dingers guest, Dan. You know him on the site at danjpreciado, multi-time dog bowl qualifier. That's where I've had the pleasure of meeting him before. Also, maybe I'm making this up, but maybe I think a baseball guy first and foremost. And of course, we have one more, make it six pack tonight. Brad, you know him on the site and online at BRDMC3. And I believe this is also his first episode of Stacking Dingers. He joined me on a sheep seat stream last year. So that's it. That's our six pack tonight. And now for real, Billy, I will hand it over to you to start the interrogation, the line of questioning.
Yeah, we do have a little rundown I'll follow. So if you ever want to jump in, just let me know, and you can we'll just follow the script. But yeah, so I think the first thing we want to discuss tonight is just who everyone is as a drafter, what you've done historically, what you plan to do, and so on. I'll just kind of start off with. So this is my third year playing best ball, MLB best ball. 2 years ago, I did really pretty well. Like I think I did 40 drafts and advanced over 50%. It was great. And then last year I did 89 drafts, which is like the most annoying thing that I landed on 89. Who does that? Like, why can't we get to a round number? And then this year I did a pretty decently well in NFL. So I'm going to bump that up a little bit, especially in some of the more like pricier drafts this year. Last year I did all dingers. This year I'm going to be doing some of like the frozen ropes and stuff. And I'm also going to play a little bit of DraftKings. I had never played DraftKings in the past. It was like a work thing. I couldn't do it. So that's me as a drafter. I think, Jason, who are you?
Last year was the first year I maxed the dinger. I did a handful of little eliminators, I think 30 plus, and I think I got to 50 or 60 bullpens. Just really wanted to commit and try to max a tournament last year for the first time. So wasn't as great of a year advance rate wise. It was like exactly even and got a few wild card teams in. But I did make my first final, which is cool. And I min cashed the crap out of that final. So, just here to do it again. I love drafting. It's just fun, clicking players, building teams, and just see what happens. I just love doing it.
And okay, so Spencer, how about you go next? You play some other fantasy baseball outside of just best ball, right?
Yeah, so I do. I'm also like Jason. I just love drafting, and whenever I started on Underdog, I started in 2022. So this is now my fourth year, I guess, drafting here on Underdog. But for the first couple years, I was just drafting for fun because honestly, I didn't like the fact that on Underdog you just had infield, outfield, and pitcher. So I just had fun with stacks and. I kind of went crazy with just doing random stacks the first few years, so I didn't do that well, but I had fun with it. I primarily over the last like decade have been playing over on NFBC. I also have loved Best Ball 10s, which was on the NFBC site, but they got rid of that, and so because they got rid of that this year, I'm all in on Underdog. Last year was the most that I had done on Underdog Baseball. I did 100 entries into the Dinger, also like 60 in the bullpen. I never have maxed out a baseball tournament, but I'm going to this year. I'm about to max out the bullpen, almost there, and I'm planning on doing that with the Dinger as well. So, me like Billy had a good football season. We were right there together. Puka could have made a lot more money for us, but it didn't happen. So, but yeah, no, I'm super excited for this year and really looking forward to this discussion tonight.
Yeah, that was wild. We were literally in the same tournament, both in the top 10, swinging anywhere from like 7K to $100,000. And
And
like,
me and you were the only two with Puka. Like,
yeah, it was just, it could have been great for us. Going into that night, I think we were projected a lot more money than we actually ended up. But that's
yeah,
just classically how it goes.
it is.
Um, yeah, but so we'll keep moving on. Dan, I know never interacted with you, but I've seen you draft in a draft a lot, right? So, how about you tell us a little about yourself?
Yeah, so this is my second year doing best ball. Last year I maxed every single contest. I That was the game plan. I'm a huge baseball guy, as Sheep alluded to. Like I do a lot of football on Underdog also, but heart of hearts, I'm a big baseball guy. So for a long time it was just season long stuff. I was very active on NFBC, but life gets busier, and the best ball format is just it's perfect for that. So that's why I'm here, and I'm putting in the volume.
Awesome. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then last but definitely not least, Brad, tell us a little bit about yourself. Definitely know you as like a dailies legend. But yeah, tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, I've been playing underdog baseball pretty much since it started, 2021 probably. Started playing a little bit. I think the dinger was $25 back then, actually. Played a little bit of that, and then over the years, kind of got into dailies. Started having a lot of success there, and then probably back in 2022, 2023, I started maxing the dinger and pretty much every contest there is. Last year, I only maxed the dinger, didn't do any bullpen just because I got kind of worn out from the season. And this year, I've enjoyed it so far. I'm almost done with the bullpen, like I think Spencer said he almost was. I think I got 20 left or so. And then plan to max the dinger and probably any of the eliminator contest as well, which I look forward to doing this year.
Awesome. Yeah, I've never really played the Eliminator. I haven't like wrapped my head around a strategy that I think was going to be advantageous. Whatever that would be. I'm sure there is one. I don't know it. So I haven't played it yet, but it's definitely a very interesting format. Chief, you want to tell us what kind of player you are?
Yeah, so I mean, I do draft a lot, but I don't necessarily fit in with the max drafters. I'm I'm looking at 35, 40 bullpens, kind of similar to what I do most years. Kind of depends on time, and then the dinger. I usually, we'll see what the price point ends up being, but I usually try to get 50 to 80 depending on what my bankroll is looking like that year. And then I do like the higher staked one, and I have to usually do 5 to 10 of those. So I guess maybe relative to some people, I do a lot of volume, but some to this crowd, I'm a little bit smaller. So I just talk the most about it online. That's kind of my name brand.
Love it. Yeah, love it. Okay, so we'll get into like our first like meaty topic. We're going to talk about exposures, exposure management, and so on. So when you're drafting, I guess we'll first start off with do we pick players to get like way overweight and then full fades, and what does way overweight mean to some people in this group? How about let's start with Brad. What's like your highest exposure going to look like this year? And will you have full fades?
Yeah, I mean, I'll have full fades in the bullpen. I'm trying to be a little bit more aggressive, just because it's cheaper to enter and less information. Trying to take advantage of things I see out there that possibly aren't being seen right now. High for me and the dinger would be, honestly, I try not to go over 30%. I just like to flatten things out when you're doing massive volume. I don't see, the benefit in having 60, 70% of somebody. I think, it can advance you a lot, but as we saw last year with, I can't even remember who it was that had like, 100 entries that advanced and then got zero to the second round just because he was so consolidated. I like to spread it out and kind of level my exposures and hope to at least break even and go from there. So for the dinger, I'll be way more balanced, probably 30% on the high end on somebody I really like, which is typically your rookies or just value, basically.
Yeah, 30% is still like a pretty decent exposure to a player, right? Like if base is 8%, you're well over 3 times that. So it's definitely not small. Would anyone here like classify themselves as like a relatively flat exposure drafter? Or is everyone kind of have their stands?
I'm definitely a flat exposure guy. Definitely believe in diversifying and just staying flat across the board. I think you kind of want to do that in a way. You can obviously have your player takes and stuff, but I feel like once you're flat, kind of get more shots around the board, more potential shots at winning that final at the very end. So that's the way I view it.
Yeah, and it's if you believe that you're like a good drafter and then let the draft skill like it come through and then not the player take kind of skill be a part of what you're doing, then that playing it kind of flat and letting like each individual draft playing what the cards get you is definitely a great way to play it. Spencer, so what are some like ways that you come about figuring out like who's going to be someone you target, who's someone you're going to fade?
Sure. Before I answer that, I wanted to say one last thing about the what we were just talking about. So for me, this is where I look at if I'm high or low on exposures on a guy. It's based off of their draft value. So, for instance, if I'm going to be super high on someone, I would rather it be someone who I'm taking a lot at the end of the drafts in the final, say, 8 rounds, right? If I feel really strongly, like I'll tell you this year, some it can be anyone like Royce Lewis. Okay, he's going in the second to last round, round 18 or 19, or sometimes even 20. So I have a high percent of him. I don't care if he's an injury risk. I look at him as a very high upside, but at that high percent is 37%. This is currently right now in the bullpen. I do agree. I probably won't go 37% in the dinger. I'll more flatten out that exposure then. However, my point is just simply at the top of the draft, especially the first 10 rounds, I think that's where it's the most important to move your exposures across the board because that's where a lot of the really good players are. So if you're super strong stance on someone in every round 6, well then you're missing out on all of the other round 6 stars who are there. So whereas if it's round 18, it's a bit of a different story. You know what I mean? So that's what I wanted to mention with that. As far as how to get your player takes now with me, um, for me, as soon as the new season starts, I'm immediately scouting for next year. Like that's how my mind is. I'm drafting all winter, and then as soon as the season starts, my mind is like, okay, how do these guys look for how I'm going to draft next year? And so I start actually in September, and I start making my list. My I go through every position. I mean, I've got spreadsheets galore. I'm a spreadsheet guy, and it's just what I do. It's what I love. So I start player breakdowns, rankings, everything right before the season ends, and then the month of October I go hardcore into that. So the month of October for me is just a big study month on players, and I think that's a really good thing for a lot of people. Review the previous season, know what guys actually did, see the ebbs and flows, the ups and downs of the year, so that you are familiarized. Once, for me, draft starts in November. So I'm a big gladiator drafter on NFBC. I look forward to that every year. So, and that usually starts the first week of November. And then here we are, December comes around before we know it, and Underdog is time to go. So that's kind of how I do it. Is I'm constantly prepping, but I think that just understanding the player pool for your own self is a huge thing.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that what you said at the beginning of that point was you're like what overweight at the beginning of the draft is very different what overweight at the end of the draft means for you. Like being 12% someone in the beginning of the draft is like might be material at the beginning, but then if it's that at the end of the draft is kind of just like not someone you're really targeting and kind of drafting them a little bit. So I thought that was like a really interesting take. Um, let's talk about like drafting risky players, Jason. What do you know about that?
Well, if you're familiar with me, I definitely. It's kind of crazy too. When I first started playing like rotisserie fantasy baseball, I wouldn't draft an injury risk person. Just like it didn't matter what the narrative was, I would just completely stay away. And I am basically the complete opposite now. Like I, and maybe it's going to blow up in my face, but when I look at guys that I'm really overweight on right now, Kyle Bradish, Yuri Perez, I have a ton of Mike Trout. I mean, these are guys who, two pitchers coming off of major injuries that have a ton of upside, but pitcher injuries are usually pretty devastating. Mike Trout hasn't had a full healthy season. Last year wasn't that bad. He didn't miss too many games, but then he struck out like 40% of the time, it felt like. So it's just, when I'm playing this game, I'm really looking for who can score the most points in bunches. And I try really hard to not focus on safety of like getting a team through. I want to think of it in terms of if I sneak a team through the finals, what do I want that team to look like? And I want it to have as many upside arms and bats as possible. And I think that with that is going to come just natural risk of, those guys missing time or getting injured. A lot of those high upside people that I've been targeting have kind of had injury issues in the past. Shane McClanahan's a guy who I was all in on last year. Like I had a ton of him and then his, tricep exploded or whatever. So it's just, those are the guys I like to target. It didn't go wonderfully advance rate wise last year, but I really believe in trying to target these guys who can bounce back and hopefully just stay healthy and flash upside when I need it.
Yeah, I love that. It's like when you win, you want to actually like really win, and that's what you're talking about with this style of drafting. Last question. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think that the way you kind of frame that too is that, when you had your, one roto team or whatever you were doing, you wanted guys that were going to be in there, but that's one of the benefits of drafting Underdog and Best Ball. You can tell yourself that the risk is worth it because the, like you said, what you win when you win is different than the mindset you had in turn. Maybe it wasn't home leagues or whatever that you were playing, but even if, it wasn't, it's still, unless you're in like the big NFBC buy-in, you're not competing for these big prizes, which is, a different mindset entirely.
Well, I think speaking directly to that, I mean, before I maxed the dinger, the year before I maxed, I did 77 or whatever, and I don't really recall being as in on, high upside, maybe potentially injured guys as I am now. And it really is a volume thing. If I peak at 25% with Mike Trout or whatever, if he goes down for 2 months, hopefully it's early in the season, we get him back and sneak one through, but 25% of 150 isn't going to completely and totally sink my year.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's where the playoffs matter so much, right? So like you said, you get your lineups through. Well, it's such an important thing that for me now, multiple years of doing this, last year was the year that I had the most lineups make it to the playoffs. And so to really see this from a multiple years, it's all about that upside in the playoffs. You have to have guys. That's where I'm looking at power big time this year. Power is a huge thing for me. And I'm not looking at guys like Luis Ariz and Stephen Kwan and people like this. Like, I don't want them because, yeah, they can help you get through there. Who cares about getting through there and advancing? The money is all about making it to the last week. So you have to take risks and you have to be thinking about who can pop in those last weeks. So, anyway, I completely agree.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Anything else on exposures? Kind of like maybe like a poll question before we move on. Does anyone use any sort of technology outside of the Underdog app to manage their exposures?
Yeah, I do. Just here recently, actually. So, like Matthew said, I'm in the Bubba and the Bloom Discord, which I know he is as well. And over there in that Discord, one of the guys in the Best Ball channel, Reducing Juice is his handle, he posted a sheet, like a Google sheet that he does for himself. And I don't know, I think I'm the only one that actually downloaded it. No one else is really talking about it, but it is awesome, the sheet that he has that he posted on there for anyone who's in that Discord. I mean, so I can tell you right now with this sheet, I can import my CSV from Underdog, and I can go to build overview. I could tell you right now, I take 79% outfielders in round one, 10% infield, 11% pitcher. My builds, 84% of my builds are 776. And I can tell, it's got a pair percent. So if I take, for instance, let's say I take Shohei Otani, and then I'm like, oh, how many times did I get? Who's someone you would get at the turn with Shohei Otani, real quick, guys?
Rooker
Yeah.
or
Rooker,
yeah.
Rooker,
Kurtz.
Rooker. So I'm going to type in Rooker. I've paired with Otani twice, and Kurtz I've paired with Otani twice. So I just got this sheet from him 2 weeks ago, and I was already 83 drafts into the bullpen. But this is something that I'm going to be using a lot now here, especially towards the end. And I have been. These last 50 drafts. I'm at 138 right now, of like noticing who I have paired with who, what my exposures are. Before this, no, everything was just based off looking at the 80, looking at your exposures on the app, and that's just it in my head. But I've really, really enjoyed having this sheet. So just wanted to throw that out there. It is a big help.
I think, and Billy, you were nice enough to put something together for me last year. I think the combinatorial ownership thing, or knowing who you have paired, I think that can be a pretty big edge, because if if every single one of your Aaron Judge teams has Mike Trout, and one of those two guys, I mean, they're basically both going down together.
Yep.
And there was a point last year where I did have every one of my Judge teams had the same pairing with it. I was like, okay, now I know I need to kind of mix it up a little bit. So I think that that information is very, very helpful if you can utilize a sheet to give you that.
Yeah, I asked the question knowing that I have a tool that I keep for myself, like was what Spencer mentioned, and wondering if anyone else out there was even thinking about this, because it's very common for other sports, like particularly football, to have these, but you don't really see a ton of it in the other kind of arenas. So I do agree with you. It can be a pretty big edge if you know what you're doing while drafting.
I will tell you, Billy, my plan for when the dinger starts with using this sheet, I've already thought about this. My plan is to do fit my first 50 drafts without using this sheet at all. Just draft my first 50 teams the way that I'll draft, and don't worry about exposures, don't worry about nothing. And then start looking at it once I work from there. So I want to build my portfolio the way that I like to build without worrying about it, and then diversify. So anyway, that's what
Yeah,
I wanted to add
build it
there.
kind of raw, but then also be intentional after that, getting to places where you want to get to. Yeah, like I like really plan it out, so probably almost too much, but yeah. See, Brad, you were gonna jump in maybe?
Oh no, I was just gonna say, I mean, on the note of that, I don't use anything. I'm old school, and I guess just vibes drafting usually, as one would say. But for the most part, I like to check like every 25, maybe 30 drafts, kind of look at it, and if I'm heavy on somebody, I'll flatten it out, which is what I've been doing throughout the bullpen. I think the first time I posted on Twitter, I had like 4 or 5 guys over 40%, and now I just checked, I have like 2 guys over 30. So I've kind of dropped everything down and slowly quit picking those people. The one other thing I was going to add just in drafts, um, is, I agree. I think, diversifying, especially in the earlier rounds, is really important, because all those guys in the first 2 or 3 rounds can be a top guy. Really, you just kind of want to get even amounts of everybody, and then as rounds go on, you can do more. But one thing I like to do, is really, you around 170, you kind of just start hitting. I feel like they're all the same down to 230, especially in the infield and outfield. Now the outfielders go real slim, but whether you're taking Nick Castellanos or Jorge, Soler, I mean, either one, you're kind of in those same spots. Same thing with like drafting Isaac Paredes versus Carlos Correa. And I just kind of try to draft guys that I try not to be scared at 190 to be drafting guys in the 230s. Have 4 or 5 of those guys on my team, because I think it's honestly valuable. And same thing on pitcher, you can scroll down. You don't need to draft all the Chris Bubich, even though I love him. And I have a lot of them, so he's not a good example. But you should be, scrolling down and maybe drafting Dustin May or somebody else, trying something different.
No, that's a really good point. You Once you hit that threshold, whatever you deem it at, they're all the same. So why not draft 4 17th rounders? Because nobody else is going to have 4 guys in that same like 12 or 15 ADP pocket. So that is a really interesting point. Well, now I want to move on to the next topic: timing of drafts. We'll start with Mr. Max to everything, Dan. So, how did you go about this last year? Did you kind of draft consistently throughout? Did you save your big money for certain times? How'd you go about that?
Yeah, so I was really excited to draft baseball, so I front loaded a lot of everything. I was almost done. I had almost maxed the dinger like within a month, I think. Which in hindsight I was not happy with, because you have more complete information at the end. That's obvious. So I was not happy with it. That's something I'm not going to do this year. I'm going to try to space things out a little bit more, but I did wait to do a lot of the frozen ropes. So the bigger money towards the tail end of the draft cycle.
Yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, you kind of hit on it that the information grows later in the draft cycle, whether that's players on the team or people who haven't been getting drafted. Now you're interested in them, injuries. You kind of just you have ability to adjust in that late window. Yeah, that's a good point. Um, Jason, do you kind of do the same thing? Like you maxed last year. How did you go about it? Did you barbell or kind of consistently throughout?
I was pretty consistent, I think. I don't think that I did as many toward the back half of drafting season as I probably should. As I feel like as I've played this game, I feel like having healthy people is way more important than getting closing line value or whatever. Like, it doesn't matter if last year you got Jake Berger 8 rounds after where he started going if he was dead for 2.5 months, right? So I kind of try to keep pace with how the tournament is filling. So, if it's at 10%, maybe I like to have 10% of my entries done at that point. But I'll probably try to backload my drafts a little bit more this year, just so I'm dealing with full picture information, especially with the guys that I've been really in on early so far. If their arms and legs explode, then I have time to correct my mistakes of drafting them.
That's interesting. Yeah, it's almost like with the injured guys. I've a question. So like, do you kind of try to wait and be like a little more cautious early and then jam them in late, or do you jam them in early and then back off them late,
This
or
year,
just jam them in the whole time?
I feel like I'm just jamming them in early.
Jason just jams.
I just jam. Yeah, I just do it. Just do it. Like with Kyle Bradish, he's my second highest owned pitcher right now. So like my top 3 pitchers right now are Brandon Woodruff, Kyle Bradish, and Yuri Perez. All of which their arms could just explode at any minute, right? So, but the upside with the 3 of those guys, I think, is absolutely massive given where they're being drafted. So I am trying to really front load that, because my line of thinking is, if we see 7 innings or 3 starts of Kyle Bradish being absolutely awesome in spring training, his ADP is going to skyrocket. So if I get him right, I would rather get him right a little bit early. Again, kind of going back to getting some closing line value, but I don't want to go, 50% hoping that he's going to be fine and then back off when he starts rising. Just because he starts rising doesn't mean I don't want to draft him. It's just I can kind of sit back and say, I already got my exposure to this guy who looks awesome. I think I'm good.
Yep.
I think.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. All right. What I was going to say real quick is on that note. So as far as exposures go, I'm kind of like Jason said. I've always, if you're at 10%, you do 10%. I know last year we had, like, Dan, you probably got affected by Grayson Rodriguez, maybe Jarrett Cole, those type of things, because those happened, about a month afterwards, I feel like. And I got hit a little bit by Jarrett Cole, but that was really it because I started a little bit later. But anyways, on the point of just like injured players and how to approach them, like Jason's saying, I'm way more comfortable going with Yuri Perez or Kyle Bradish. Yes, they have histories, but what I don't want to be drafting until late is guys like, especially pitching, like Shane Bieber right now, or anybody that has some sort of elbow fatigue slash something going on that isn't resolved, and that's all you've seen. You don't see an update. Those are the guys that every year I feel like they show up to spring training and all of a sudden they're out, and they're out for the rest of the season. So I do my best to kind of steer clear of just, I'm trying to think. There's Shane Bieber. There's some guys around like 140.
Shane McClanahan. That's
Yeah.
another one right now. Mm-hmm.
There's just people that you don't know enough about. And then there's also injury prone players like we're talking about Yuri Perez or Kyle Bradish. But with those guys, I mean, all indications are they're healthy. And right now that upside's high. So you can capitalize on it with less risk. Whereas, yeah, like you said, Shane Bieber or McClanahan or, I don't know why people are really drafting. Is it Rodon that goes later?
Zach Wheeler, that's another example right now.
Yeah, there's just a lot of guys out there. So my whole philosophy on that is, yes, you want to draft late, but and not to get on to another topic or anything. I can't remember if we're talking about it, but also one of my goals this year is to not overreact to spring training, and whether that be try to take the information and do with it what you will, but especially like veteran type players, if they're slower on the mileage, different things like that, don't look too much into it. And, try to pick my spots on that type of news. Cause as everybody knows here, that news can push somebody 40 spots if they pick up, 3 miles an hour or lose 3 miles an hour or something like that. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's you hit on a great point with the spring training. There's only so many inflection points during this like drafting window. We're gonna have some free agents sign, and then but those are gonna be like one-off individual players. Then we're gonna have spring training. People are gonna show up, or they're gonna be hurt, or they're going to get hurt, or they're going to throw 1,000 miles an hour and hit 1,000 feet, and we're gonna all react. So it is interesting to like that you noted that that's going to people do it. I do it. It's kind of almost like being intentional with being like, let's pause. The takes probably were right in the past. Maybe we just keep up with them. I love that.
Yep. I wanted to piggyback on what Brad and Jason just said real quick, because I think it's an important point that, well, one, also we're drafting now in the bullpen. What we're discussing is when the dinger opens, right? Because that's what we're talking about when we're talking about spring training news and all this. The bullpen is about to close soon, and so it doesn't matter what's gonna happen. So that's why we can go a little bit crazier now. But the whole pitcher thing and with the injuries, the way I look at it is just like what Brad said, where if a guy has been traditionally hurt, but they're healthy now and they ended the year healthy, well, I'm not gonna say, well, I can't draft them. I just looked my highest 3 pitcher exposures, just very much like with Jason: Chris Sale, Jacob DeGrom, and Spencer Schwellenbach. Okay, so Schwellenbach, he is hurt. He was hurt at the end of the year, but it was a fractured forearm. It wasn't like he's recovering from Tommy John and I'm worried about a setback. And all the reports are that he should be back for spring training. So I'm not worried about Schwellenbach being hurt into the year. But Cole, McClanahan, Bieber, Wheeler, etc., these guys are going into the year hurt. Now, when the dinger gets here, I'm going to still probably want somewhere around maybe 4 or 5% exposure to these guys, because again, they could be healthy for the playoff weeks and they could crush for you in the playoffs, especially like Cole or Wheeler. So, I'm not saying I won't ever draft Cole or Wheeler in the dinger, but they will be very low exposures.
Yeah, you're not going to opt into a guy who's already hurt. The guy has been historically hurt and they're healthy right now. Thumbs up. We'll take.
Yep.
Maybe there's some edge to be had. If they are currently hurt, I'm going to pass on that. That makes a lot of sense. Unless you're getting it at like a very nice value, and therefore that 4% isn't just like a 4%, it's a 4% at a good quality ADP value, and you've gotten 2 rounds, and your teams look great on those. Sheep, I'm not going to leave you out of this. So, talk to me about your thoughts on like higher dollar contests when you draft those, eliminators, and then maybe even switching over to like, do you draft DraftKings or some other websites at different times?
I, as far as higher dollar stuff, I do also distribute those for the most part, because those end up a lot of the time being slow drafts. It's hard to get fast draft to fire for those, and I don't want to be sitting around in those lobbies for it to fire while I'm about to go to sleep or something like that, or I forgot that I entered it, sort of thing. So those tend to be slow drafts for me. So those I try to distribute, and then as far as the eliminator, which I don't know if we're getting this year, I'm not too sure. I haven't heard anything about that from my sources, so maybe I'm wrong. But that would be, I would just distribute over the course of stuff. The one difference, the single entry last year, the name is escaping right now, but that one, I think generally most people save that till the end. Most people want the most information on their single entry lineup. So I think there is actually some gamesmanship that you could do in that like the people that are thinking the most and probably the best drafters are all waiting to the end. So maybe it makes sense to try to game that a little bit and do that a month before. You're going to be missing out on information, but you might hit a weird room that everyone else is kind of not going to get.
Yeah, talk about FOMO with the solo shot, I believe.
Yes, the solo shot. Yeah,
and talk about massive FOMO. You draft early on your $75 single entry, and it goes like meh, and then you watch all of your rest of your dinger season go by, and you just draft banger after banger. Like, oh, that's gotta like hurt your heart a little bit too if you do it that way.
Yeah, and again, that's going to be slow if you want to try to beat most people into that, because that doesn't fire till till the end. So that is one thing to be aware of as you're looking at the lobby once stuff drops.
Yeah, liquidity in those higher dollar contests is not going to be there. You're likely not to have them fill, and if it's going to be filling, it's likely the same people over and over again. So,
yeah. And that, I mean, that brings into a whole nother level of gamesmanship of, if you are in the same contest with, probably some of these people in this room potentially, and myself included, you can probably pick up some tells and some signs of what people are doing in those contests, because traditionally, and we can maybe, we'll go over this when those contests drop, but traditionally those are also a higher amount of drafters go out of the first round, advance into the playoffs. So people do tend to play differently in those contests, maybe a little more conservatively, trying to just to get a median projection more so and be a top 4 finisher to get into the playoffs. So that's something else to think about in terms of the higher dollar contests.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like you have a better chance. You pay for it, and you're not going to have as big a paycheck at the end of the day, but you have a better chance of getting there. But then you're paying your way into getting a better outcome too. So I do like the higher dollar stuff. Those frozen ropes are going to be interesting to me this year to get a little bit better of a tournament. Okay, moving on with the conversation. I kind of want to pivot back to the favorite team that I drafted of all time with Jason, where I think it was not last year, 2 years ago, we put together an absolute banger. The reason you're going to always hear me ask for a regular season payout, because 2 years ago I had the regular season champ by like a lot, and we drafted on stream together. And one of the things that actually made the team so special is because I did this like unique play where I pulled up Lindor like almost a full round, and it worked out well because I built out a stack. So there's a couple of things there, a little bit of uniqueness, stacking teams, and so on. So Jason, you want to like talk about what we did and how it worked?
Yeah, I also remember we drafted Grayson Rodriguez instead of Logan Gilbert that year at my behest. So yeah, that's my bad. But no, I distinctly remember doing that draft with you because I think it was the first time we drafted together, and I distinctly remember you doing that pull up of getting Lindor so you could get the stack with, I believe it was Alonso and Soto. Was that it? I can't remember.
I feel like it may have been Nimmo. I don't know.
Yeah, that's right. Nimmo was on the team, but regardless, like you reached, I want to say 8 to 11 spots. I want to say to grab Lindor purely for the stack, just to try to get a little bit different, because how the ADPs were kind of working out with the guys you wanted to stack for the Mets. It really wasn't possible to do that unless Lindor, had a huge fall or you did something like that. And you being bold enough to stack in that particular way made that team a lot different. And yeah, you nailed a lot of the other stuff later too. But I think that draft was a prime example of like, let's make a unique stack work, because if this unique stack goes off, nobody else is going to have it. Unfortunately, that team, I don't think it made it out of the first round of the playoffs. And the second overall high scoring team wound up winning the Dinger that year. So that's not frustrating at all. But that's just how it goes. Anything can happen. But I think, you forcing that stack and making sure that we had those stacks on that team was huge to that particular team's success that year.
Yeah. And one of the talking points of our rankings discussion last week, Cheap, was that you have this big fatty like infield tier that's like 4 rounds, right? So how you can move someone around, that they're both maybe 3rd round players, and you like both of them on the same team, you can go put them on the same roster, maybe a 2-3 turn if it makes sense. So that's kind of what we did with that. Stacking, who should we talk? Brad. I mean, stacking, like you're Mr. Dailies. Like, so tell us about why stacking in baseball is so powerful, but also then why stacking a team like the Colorado Rockies can be disastrous.
Hey, don't talk bad about the Rockies. So, no, I mean, evidence. I think you're the one that does a lot of it. Honestly, you pull data and whatnot, and in best ball, stacking. Whether it's just the combination of points. What it's basically amplifying of if Soto does good, then Nemo's doing, or not Nemo anymore. Sorry, Alonzo, Simeon, that type of thing.
Not
From what I
Alonso
remember,
anymore either.
God dang it, I can't even get my name straight right now. But yes, I mean, when it comes to dailies and when it comes to MLB Best Ball, in my opinion, they're a little bit different. I think I kind of stick to certain ways I play dailies, whether that be 3-1-1 or 3-2 or 2-2-1. I admit you'll never see me going with a 1-1-1-1-1 thing. I rarely go 4-1 or 5-0. But in best ball, I prioritize stacking. I know lots of people don't. And I just, when I'm sitting in spots, I guess the problem I run into is I do stack, so I end up with a lot of the same combinations, which is probably why Spencer was talking about that sheet helping you out. Because if I'm taking, like you said, Otani, you have Rooker and Kurtz twice. I wonder if they're on the same team because my brain is like, I only want Rooker and Kurtz together. Um, so stuff like that, and it amplifies what your scores can do. So it gives you a bigger ceiling, is what it would do. I I like to stack. I probably overstack. And I am the person that will draft the Rockies and will draft the White Sox and the Cardinals and the Marlins and every other crappy team you can think of because I don't know. I just like it. I can't help myself. So I got me some Owen Cassie today and some Marlin stacks. I probably did 5 or 6 of those for my last drafts today. But anyways, that's me.
Yeah, digging deep in the player pool. I love it. Spencer, so now that you have this new tool, um, are you going to be, you said very intentional with your player combinations, your stacking combinations, and so on? Like, are you going to kind of plan that out? What's your game plan with some of that, or have you not fully thought through that yet?
Oh, I've thought about it. That's all pretty much all I think about. So, yeah. So basically, again, I don't. The way that I look at stacking on Underdog specifically with this, I do think it's important. I definitely agree with what you guys said. I don't think that it's drastically important. And I think that probably what can happen for too often is people overstack. I think that's an important thing because I have fallen into that group. And like what Brad said, when you are so focused on stacking and you are always putting the same people together, when those lineups don't work out, all of a sudden they all don't work out. So I look at stacking like this. I will use if players are teammate pairs, if I have someone, if I can stack as maybe a tiebreaker. If I'm down at the end and I have an Ellie De La Cruz team, maybe in round 18, I take Noelvi Marte instead of Ivan Herrera. And then maybe in round 20, I add Matt McClain instead of whatever other round 20 pick I would have taken. So you see what I mean? Like I will look to stack people in, but I am not going to be stack as I go. And I have in the past. Don't get me wrong. I've 100% done that. Like I mentioned a couple of years ago, I mean, whenever I say I went overstacking, I went overstacking in my first year doing it, and I want to say it was 22. It's 23. I did a little bit less crazy, although I did some of this, but I would basically pick like 4 or 5 teams, and I would star all of the players from those teams, and I would literally draft. I didn't care where in the ADP, and I was just team stacking that way. Um, and it was fun. I had a great time doing it, but the results did not work. So, I think that you can overstack is my point, but it is also very important. So look at it as a tiebreaker.
Yeah, the overstacking. I don't know. I forgot who mentioned it. The drafter last year who went like 100 for 150 and advancing, and then completely got 0 of them to the subsequent round. The sweating dingers is down, which is disappointing. But if their like their team distribution was like insane, if I remember correctly. They had drafted like a ton of Cubs, and it was great during the regular season. And because they were so concentrated, the upside was immense. Their whole portfolio gained from it. But then the risk, high reward, and it destroyed it. So that's why you're constant. If you draft 5 players from one offense, like you better hope they're cooking for multiple weeks at a time during the playoffs, or you really have like a very narrow way of winning. And we would like to build options. You don't want to have just one option. You would like to have multiple options.
What do you guys think, real quick, is too much from so Dan, I know you're drafting all of these. How many players from one team is too many players from one team? For me, I think my answer is anything more than 5. I think 5 is the most that I would want to go from one team myself, but what do you guys think?
I typically try to avoid 5+. I typically cap it at 4 unless I'm getting some kind of screaming value to tack on that 5th piece.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's the way I view it.
Me too.
I'm right there with you,
Brad
Dan.
and Jason, you guys too? Is that like your number for stacks, or?
Yeah, I usually cap it at 4, and I mean I'm only going to stack 4 with I think a really really good offense. Like if I go, Murakami and Colson Montgomery, I'm not going to force a 4 stack with like Miguel Vargas and Kyle Teal. I just don't think that that's necessary, right? But if it's the A's, if I can get Rooker,
Brad's
and
laughing.
Kurtz,
He's like, "Oh, I love doing that."
I know he does. But if I can get like the Braves, for example, if I can start with Acuna and then get Olsen and then get Riley, like I'll tack on a 4th Brave, whether it's Harris or maybe even Kim at the very end. But 4 is typically where I like to stop.
What are you talking about though? Just so just because you're mentioning it, that's just hitters. I'm talking about players from a team period, also including pitchers. So you don't include. You're just talking about hitters in that.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I will stack some staff sometimes because I think you in a way increase your likelihood. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys, of getting a 2-start week if you have 3 or 4 guys from the same staff. You decrease maybe nominally your likelihood of getting multiple 2-start weeks, but you're at least almost guaranteeing yourself a 2-start week, which is so huge. I mean, we saw it last year in the final. Like if you didn't have Brian Wu, like you were up a creek because he just snapped for 2 straight starts and when it mattered the most. So I do like to stack pitching staff sometimes. Again, it's not something I'll force, but there's some pretty easy ones and pretty neon sign flashing level pitching staffs. You want to be like, yeah, I definitely want 3 or 4 guys on Seattle staff or whatever.
And if the draft makes it affordable.
Yeah. But I was just going to add on all that. I don't count my pitchers when it comes to stacks. Like when I'm talking stacks, I'm just talking hitters. I like getting 2 or 3 pitchers together for the exact same reason Jason said. Dan was kind of shaking his head is you kind of maximize your opportunity at maybe 3 2-start weeks, honestly. Finding that if you're stacking your pitchers. But on the hitter side, like I'm guilty of what you were saying earlier. I overstack. So like you'll find me stacking the Cardinals, the Cubs. I have 4, or the Marlins. I have 4 of all those teams, which is to my detriment. And it's probably what helps me in dailies, but it's probably what kills me in best ball. Because I just like to get weird. I find it fun. I mean, it's why I had Kyle Stowers. I think I had the most Kyle Stowers last year, but that's just because I do weird shit.
I think that I find it really fun too, so I get it.
I mean, I find things this year. I'm on Jordan Walker. Different things that I do that nobody else is really doing, and I did Josh Lowe years ago. There's just certain guys I stick to and kind of have fun with it. So
I've witnessed you draft Nolan Gorman this year. I
have Miguel Vargas.
Do your thing, man.
You name them, I've drafted them. So
I'm definitely in the overstack camp with Brad. 4 or 5 is not unheard of for most of my teams, and a lot of times it's two teams with there's like a team with 3 hitters from one, and then maybe 4 or 5 from another. So that might I'll admit that might just be laziness, just the star method. And I'm going through, it's funny because you do slow drafts and you say to yourself, oh, this is going to be awesome because I'm going to be able to take my time on all these picks. I'll have 8 hours per pick. This is going to be great. And then you look and you've got 20 picks and you're like, oh, crap, I got to go pick up the kid from school and they're all expired in an hour. So I'll just fly through. So I'll admit that it's probably not the most optimal way, but it's how I get through some drafts is to overstack just out of convenience of picks too. Because at the end of the day, we're drafting to have fun, and we can't be grinding every edge to a nub. So some of it has to come back to how it fits in with your actual life too. Especially, I mean, I can only imagine trying to, how much time, Dan, when you got like all of them in a month, how much time that took. And so, yeah.
Do you
I
draft
think
multiple at once when you do something like that, Dan? Do you multi-table draft?
I normally draft 3 at once. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
It allows me to save so much time maxing. So that's what I do. I'm used to doing it with football, so I do it with baseball too, even though it's much more difficult in baseball. I will say.
Yeah, I've done it in football as well. I mean, especially sometimes whenever tournaments are about to close and I won't trying to max it out, and I'll sometimes in football I've had 5 or 6 going at once, which is crazy, like fast ones, But with baseball, I usually don't try to overlap more than 2 at once, just because I'm trying to pay more attention. Football, it's more mindless, I think.
Okay, one more question on the topic of stacking, and this is something I've thought about in the past. Is looking at the lineup, and trying to target the top of a lineup, almost like foolish to try to do that and build stacks a certain way, or is that you think that there's benefit in kind of looking at roster resource and getting a sense for, okay, I'm going to draft the A's top of the lineup and so on. I don't know who wants to field that.
I'll jump at this for just a second, real quick.
Yeah.
I look a lot at I look a lot at rosters, but I think trying to predict a lineup is pointless. It just don't try. Just draft who you're going to draft, and look at things like WRC plus or XWOBA or different hard hit, different things. But I would not be worrying about lineup spots because that thing changes daily. I mean, you talked just a second ago about Matt McClain. He was the second hitter almost all year, moved on to the 9 hole for the second half of the season. And he could start next year at the 2 hole again. We have no idea where he's going to start. So, I mean, I would say don't focus too much on lineup spots, but at least you can look a little bit into platoons. And y'all may have a different opinions on this, but I probably don't do enough thinking about platoons. Whereas I should focus on everyday players, but a lot of times I get sucked into a lefty masher or something, and it's
Gary
just
Carpenter.
yeah, it's just what happens. And so, anyways, I would say don't look into roster spots or lineup spots. Sorry.
And circling back to something you said earlier, so when someone comes out with a piece of news in spring training that someone might be a leadoff hitter, don't put too much weight into that because that lineup spot may not be that solid.
It all changes, especially, I mean, Cedric Mullins is a good example of that when he was with Baltimore. I mean, I think we had many arguments in the Discord about that last year. Michael Harris has been one of those guys. There's multiple people we talk about. I think draft them for their stats. Don't worry about lineup spot because Ronald Acuna will get hurt, and Michael Harris may bat first, or he may suck and move down to 6th anyways.
Yep, and roster resource, it's a great tool. I've used it for years, but they're wrong all the time. So they're just guys guessing just like us. It's an educated guess, but it's still a guess. So exactly, I don't put much focus on where people are hitting in the lineup. It's nice to think about every once in a while, but it's not that important.
I think it's kind of a silly exercise too. Like if you don't like Michael Harris batting ninth, is him batting sixth? So you're going to be like, ooh, now we're in. Like that just seems, that just seems like a variable that doesn't matter as much to me. Like, is batting sixth better than batting ninth? Yeah, probably. But like,
Ninth to me, ninth should be better because then you've got turn around and you've got Acuna and
yeah,
and Matt Olson hitting right
yeah,
after you to knock you in. So
just depends on the lineup.
hmm
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
I just
maybe
wanted
it's more. Go ahead.
Oh, I wanted to jump in on another thing Brad said there for platoon bats. I think, you should pay attention to that for infielders, but at this point, the way the outfield has gone year after year, driven up, and at this point, you have to commit to some platoon outfielders on your teams, the ones that you like, maybe, and dig into that a little bit in terms of who might be getting more platoon time, and you can go you can go crazy doing that too, because year over year, like righty lefty splits like through a career are really sticky, and like they will trend towards league average platoon splits, but on a year over year basis, platoon splits can do some crazy things, and that's where you get like these guys that get known as lefty mashers just because they hit lefties good for a year and then they go back to a regular thing. So I think you can get like as much like getting down the rabbit hole to guessing lineup orders this early. Like you can get down too far into a rabbit hole in terms of like trying to guess platoon splits too for a single year at a time.
Yeah, that's a great point. So we're going to wrap things up now, but for those who lasted an hour today, I think everyone should provide them with a player take, a fade, a target. I don't care what it is. Just give me a name that you like or don't like this year. Jason, how about you start us off?
I'm looking at my exposures right now.
You can't say Mike Trout.
I'm not going to say Mike Trout. I'm not going to do it. I am going to do something insane and actually say a White Sox player, which feels really gross to me as a White Sox fan. But you can get a guy who projects on the Bat X for, I think, 34 home runs around like pick 170. And I have been drafting Munetaka Murakami like crazy. It could go terribly, but he also could be awesome. And he's the type of guy that I think is absolutely perfect for this format because I don't care if he sucks for 2 weeks. I only care about the 1 week he's awesome. It's kind of my theory, right? So he's a guy that I've been heavily in on. I mentioned the pitchers already. I also think Logan Gilbert is the most underpriced ace right now. Fades wise, I don't have anything that's like sticking out to me, but I do keep fading George Springer every single year, and he continues to absolutely destroy me for doing that. So I think I'm gonna like virtually fade him again this year, and just one of these years he's gonna retire, and I can finally say I'm right. But I don't know why I never get to him. Seems like there's always guys around him that I'd rather have. I've clicked him a couple times this year, but he's one of those kind of early outfielders that I haven't really been getting to all that much. And another really early guy that I've been fading that doesn't really feel very good is Freddie Freeman. I've been prioritizing actually Mookie Betts. I'm kind of a believer in losing 20 pounds in like 6 days before the season can completely and totally wreck your year. So I'm kind of leaning into this narrative that he's not washed. And at ADP 40 something, I feel like he could be a steal if he's healthy and gets back to being that guy.
Awesome. Well, I asked for a name. I think you just gave us 7. So that was really nice. Spencer, what do you got for us?
I got 7 as well. So so For me, I wanted to ask you real quick, Jason, where is Murakami for you? Your infield 4, 5 normally when you take him?
Yeah, he's usually my fourth or
Your
fifth
fourth.
infielder.
So
Yeah,
I think that's important
it's a
too.
structure thing.
With someone like him because I'm about to tell you who my number one drafted person of the bullpen is. And I don't. This is. I've never done this before, but I'm committing to this year. I'm committing to. You heard me say earlier. 776 is 84% of my builds, and most every draft I'm committing to Dalton Varsho as my sixth outfielder, and I'm done at outfield by pick 150. I'm pushing all of my last round picks to infield and pitcher almost exclusively. Now, Brad, don't worry. I still have some Jordan Walker. So I don't all it's but it's 50%. 50% of my drafts, I'm Dalton Varsho. And it's the same thing. Dalton Varsho, he had 20 home runs last year in 200 at bats. Dalton Varsho, if he's healthy, well, we'll see. But he's a masher. He and I believe in him. And Toronto's great. I mean, obviously, we just watched Toronto. Toronto's phenomenal. So I'm all in. And Toronto is my highest stacked team, by the way. They have amazing pieces to take all throughout the draft. So I look 64% of my drafts, I have Toronto stacks on those teams. So I'm believing in Toronto stacks. What I'm fading at the top, I told you earlier, almost all of my top picks are outfielders or pitchers in the first 2 rounds. It's usually not infield. So I'm fading Bobby Witt, Ellie De La Cruz, Jose Ramirez, and that's scary. I only have like 5% of those guys. I just looked Jose's 3.6, for instance. Um, that is scary. But I'm just committing to outfield. Or I am committing to one of those top three pitchers this year. Skeen, Skubal, Crochet. I want one of them on most of my builds. Not all of them, but most, like 60%. Like I'm at like 20% across the board with those three guys. I want to start with one of those studs. So that's the big ones. And then late, Royce Lewis and Ivan Herrera are my late infielders that I've got the most of. 35% of both of those guys. I especially love Ivan Herrera this year. I think he's incredibly underpriced.
Yeah, you guys are gonna steal all the names. Dalton Varsho, interesting. I did not realize he had 20 home runs last year. I think with Dalton Varsho, I can't get over the fact that he has like such a noodle arm in the outfield. But he catches everything. So yeah, that I maybe I should take a look back at what he did last year. I'm looking at his spray chart now, and it's just straight pull power. So that's
Yeah, he
interesting.
crushes. He just crushes.
Yeah. Dan, who you got for us?
Yeah, so it doesn't surprise me even a little bit that me and Jason are on the same page. My first or my most drafted player so far in the bullpen is Murakami. That's my go-to. I've been doing all kinds of different White Sox stacks with Vargas and Lou Bob. So I'm high. I'm high there. I'm high on the Marlins. I'm high on the Rockies. So all the bad teams. But my fades, they're kind of tough. I have drafted J Ram once. I am totally out on him this year. It's not something I think I'm willing to do. I think a year older, really bad offense. I'm not in on it. But the one that's really surprising for me is I'm just fading all the Dodgers. I'm a Dodgers fan. I'm fading all of them except for Otani. I think all these guys are getting a year older. Don't really believe in a lot of the profiles, and I'm really, really sagging off.
Yeah, and this is ultimately a volume game, and that team is so good they don't really need to push the volume with their players. So if they're not going to be running up big like at bat numbers, especially like massive compilers like Mookie and Freddie Freeman, then their value in this type of format definitely goes down. So it's like
And
a
big thing with their pitching too is
mm,
they're the most likely team to go the whole season with a six-man rotation. Almost every team that says they're going to do a six-man rotation, that will be ruined quickly because people will be hurt and they don't have the arms. The Dodgers, they've got arms for days. So you may not get any two starts out of Dodgers pitchers. That's a little scary because I also like Yamamoto a lot, but still, and
yeah.
Sheehan, I take a lot of him too.
Yeah, and it's definitely like it. I respect you, Dan, that put the fandom aside and you said you're looking at yourself in the mirror and you're like, I'm not drafting my favorite team this year. Jason couldn't do that. He's gonna draft himself some White Sox.
Well, normally I'm the opposite. I don't want to draft them because they're White Sox, but this year I don't know. That guy's just he's got a hold of me.
Yeah. Well,
I think that's more an accusation for me in drafting Brewers, no matter what, which last year worked out.
Brad, you give us some targets, some fades, maybe someone real deep in the player pool.
That's what I plan on doing. First off, I made Jason draft his first Miguel Vargas share, so you're welcome. And Spencer, you opened my eyes to Varsho because I don't think I've touched him not once in 130 drafts. So, anyways, yeah. So I'm going to start with my fades just because, and I'm going to say lots of names here. I'm going to go ahead and say the group of 5 pitchers in the beginning. I have drafted them all maybe once, if that. Probably 0% on most of them. That's Skubal, Skeens, Crochet, Yamamoto, and Sanchez. Yams, I think, is easy for the reasons Spencer just said. The 6-man rotation. I think last year was kind of the ceiling of what he can do. And then the other thing I would say on pitchers is I'm actually even at the point now, I'm kind of, with the exception of Bubba Chandler, I'm kind of like in the fade these year 2 guys like Savage and McLean and I'm trying to think of the other ones, but there's 4 or 5 of them all in that same Cam Schittler. Now they all have talent, but I think they've just risen so much, especially like Savage from the playoffs and Cam from the playoffs. I just think they may be a little overvalued at this time. That's kind of my takes on the pitchers. And then just some names on who I'm fading. Kurtz, I don't have a whole lot of, or Raleigh. I think Raleigh's kind of popular to not have a lot of. And then the outfield, just early round guys, Riley Green, Butler, I'm not a big fan of. And then I think everybody's on this, but O'Neill Cruz, I think he just sucks, but he can't hit lefties, that's for sure. And then as far as guys I'm excited about, so I'll just give you some hot takes here. So first off, Wyatt and Jackson Merrill. One of those 2 guys starts next year in the top 12 as a draft. One of them is going to move up. One of them is going to take the next step. One of them is going to finish as a top 12 player this year. I don't know if it'll be Langford or Jackson Merrill, but I'm pretty confident in saying that one of those guys is undervalued right now, if not both. And then just on the more outlier type things, I'm with Spencer, and I think a lot of us are there on Ivan Herrera, things like that. Some notes I made just on some later picks. Chris Bubich from Kansas City, he's got a big ceiling. There's a guy out there, I don't know if any of y'all are drafting him, and I may be the only idiot doing it, but Jacob Lopez, he's got a weird delivery. He's with the Athletics. He's kind of one of those guys that everything on his metrics doesn't necessarily show that he's going to be great, but everything he kind of possessed last year with his delivery shows that he may be a unique guy that people are overlooking, although he does play in Sutter Park. So there is some downside to that. And then I'm trying to think if I have anything else. My last hot take will be, Jordan Walker. I mean, he went to Driveline, as I think my Twitter profile says, and he's going to do it this year. He is the same age as JJ Weatherholt. If you wanted to know that, he's 22 years old. Everybody's written him off. Whether Driveline or whatever. I think he's just one of those guys that has immense upside. And yes, he does play for the Cardinals, but they got some good young talent. And what's the difference in drafting them and some of the White Sox, I guess. Sorry, Jason, but I still think they're going to suck. So,
Brad, I was going to ask you, do you have a lot of Murakami also?
No, I don't. I don't get on the
Asian train.
I don't. I never have. Never been a thing for me. I've drafted some because Jason and I text, and he's gotten me, and I've seen the projections, and I'm like, God damn. So I probably should, and after this, I probably will. But he's somebody I haven't touched a lot of. I probably have less than 5%.
I was just gonna say I was basically not drafting Murakami at all for the first probably couple weeks of this tournament, and then I was talking with Saints to Death in the Discord, and which I'm surprised he's not on here with us. He's a high volume drafter too, but he was talking all about Murakami, and I'm like, well, I guess I need to probably draft some more Murakami, but I actually like Akamoto more, but I'm a roto brain, and I think for underdog, Murakami is probably the better pick because again, we didn't really talk about this, but scoring power matters so much for scoring points. So, especially having those big pop weeks. So, um, yeah, I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, awesome. These are some really good names. Cheap. We'll leave ours for last episode if you want to look at what we think about some players. Went through like essentially like the top 200 of each individual ranks and kind of talked about where we stood. So there's some really good stuff there. Yeah, and I'll pass it back to you now for an outro.
Oh, I just need to say to Dan though that I think he should still be buying Will Smith and Max Muncy away at the end. I think those guys can
Max
still put
Muncy.
up those guys can put up weeks that you want in the playoffs, and at that point for the infield, hopefully you've stacked up enough guys so you're missing out on the rest weeks or where they're getting rested. Or Max Muncy usually is good for a IL stint too. So I think
those are my two exceptions.
Mhm.
So we're on board there.
Yeah. Excellent. All right. So this has been awesome. We have had Jason, Spencer, Dan, Brad, Billy, and myself. I mean, the bullpen's gonna be full, so go fill that, and then we're gonna be drafting the main event, the dinger, and we're gonna be here, talking through it all the way through to the start, and I'm sure you'll see some of these faces along the way again too. So for everyone and myself, thank you for watching, and let's go fill some lobbies.